Well, Wall Street is in a bad mood today over a lack of stimulus optimism. Now, stimulus optimism has been rampant on Wall Street over the last month or so. People very, very bullish that Congress will come in and save the day and spend a bunch of money, which will somehow find its way into the stock market and keep stock prices high. But this last week or so hasn't been too good for the stimulus polls because Nancy Pelosi seems like quite the hardliner. She's talking quite the tough game, and people are thinking, thought at first, okay, yeah, this is normal Washington squabbling. She's going back and forth with Trump, and Trump saying, here's 1.8 trillion, and Nancy going, no, I want 2.4 trillion, and it has to be exactly my bill. And it's like, blah blah, yes, but of course they'll come to an agreement eventually, but people are getting impatient. People are getting upset at Pelosi and saying, hey, you've played your game enough. We've done the dance. Now get in line. And people are not happy with Nancy that she is still standing her ground for some reason. And at first you have defecting Democrats who just really like spending money, who are not true socialists necessarily, but I guess you could say true Keynesians. People who think that it was urgent that the government spend a bunch of money and that is really going to help the economy and that people are going to do very poorly without it. And to a certain extent, I mean, they're true in that, if somebody is almost broke and then they get a check from the government that helps them get by for a couple more weeks. And of course, Nancy's bill, her 2.4 trillion one, is, as I'd imagine the Republican bill is, but hers specifically, totally filled with, pork and things and handouts to Democrat jurisdictions, state and local governments, of course, not necessarily directly to individuals. And so there's not a ton of patience for people who are watching her, hold out and delay an eventual compromise. She was just on CNN yesterday and melted down over this whole situation. Wolf Blitzer essentially said, hey, why don't you take the deal? People need money. Trump's trying to give them money, and you won't let him do it. You're being, you're one of those obstructionists that we used to hear so much about when Obama was president. Oh my gosh, Obama wants to help the people, but the people in Congress, they just keep getting in his way. They're obstructing the president from helping people. And now the media thinks that Nancy's doing the same thing. It really is remarkable. And it seems like, maybe a week and a half ago, that people were saying, oh my gosh, Trump is so dumb. He said he's not going to negotiate with Nancy Pelosi on the stimulus stuff anymore. He's he's lost this issue. He's going to kill himself for re-election. Well. And even in this short period of time, the issue's already turned around in Trump's favor. Now Trump looks like the good guy, and Nancy Pelosi is being the one who's totally intransigent. Something that, I'm not shocked by. Because I told you about the whole idea that I had heard first on Twitter, so I have to credit at AM Live Monitor. The Treasury General account has something like $1.6 trillion in it, or $1.8 trillion in it. So this offer that Trump is making, he literally has the cash to back it up. And so it doesn't matter if Nancy Pelosi goes along with it or not. All Trump is doing by making this offer to Nancy Pelosi is, trying to help her save face, essentially. Because, if she stonewalls this and says, I'm not going to appropriate the funds so that the president can have his $1.6 trillion, the president can just go out and spend it himself and do it all on his own and get all the credit. And he'll be able to give people a bunch of checks. And on the memo for that check, Trump can write, courtesy of Donald J. Trump and not Nancy Pelosi. Pelosi didn't want you to have this check. He can do that. And that would be a political nightmare for Pelosi. Trump would literally be able to buy votes. He'd just mail people checks and say, I'm giving this to you. Nancy Pelosi wouldn't give it to you. And so there you go. You're richer because of Trump. And so given that, I'm surprised that Pelosi is still hanging on. What does she have to gain by hanging on? I mean, she's not making she's not, helping, she's not appeasing the left in her party, because the left, in her party just says, hey, what Trump's offering is better than nothing. Why don't we just take what Trump's offering? 1.8 trillion is better than $0. And people say that like 1.8 trillion isn't an insane amount of money to begin with. I mean, if they took that 1.8 trillion and divided it up evenly and gave, a check to every single American, um, that would make an incredible difference in people's lives. Now, of course, they're not going to do that. They're probably just going to do the $1,200 checks again, and then the rest of the money will all be, pork barrel spending. But I mean, seriously, you gave everybody $5,000. That would make a huge difference in a lot of people's lives. For a split second, it wouldn't. Most people would not be able to take advantage of that break and turn their lives around if they're already in a really bad shape financially. But for some people who don't just take that money and go out and buy stocks, which is what Wall Street is betting on, that everyone's going to get their stimulus money and go buy stocks, because that happened last time, sadly enough. Maybe that could do some positive good. Because it's not like any of this money has to be taxed away from anyone anyway. All this money that is in the Treasury General account right now was printed up by the Fed to buy up these bonds that were issued by the U.S. Treasury over the course of this year. And so it's all just, monetized debt. This is printed up money from the Fed. There's totally an unlimited amount of it. So I don't think that Wall Street is wise to be worried right now that there's going to be no stimulus. Because again, if Nancy Pelosi, for whatever reason, doesn't want to get up on board the Trump train, train's leaving the station. And he's going to be handing out cash to everybody who wants it. I mean, there's no reason to believe that Trump will go into November 3rd leaving $1.6 trillion on the table, literally. I mean, that is money. He can go out right now and spend and try and buy goodwill and buy support from people. And so one way or another, before Election Day, you're going to see that at least $1.6 trillion being spent. And I don't think that that's good for the economy, certainly. If anything, if the government is mailing checks to people to try and prop up businesses that otherwise would have failed, if that extra spending from these consumers, from money from a one-time payment that they got from the government, saves a business for a week or two, or for a month, or for a year, those are businesses that should have gone out of business, and that are using up scarce resources in inefficient ways that is in effect making us all poorer, because they are wasting resources that exist in our economy. When bad businesses go out of business, those resources that they use, the land, labor, and capital, all of that gets freed up, and somebody else can buy it and try and reorganize that in a way that the community actually benefits from, and that is profitable. A business is only profitable if they are adding value for their customers. If a business is not profitable, and in fact they generate losses and go out of business, which is what should happen, that means that they are destroying value. It's a very simple concept. And so the whole argument behind why we need stimulus is flawed. But it is correct that it will probably help Wall Street, because Wall Street is populated by a ton of failing businesses that don't make money, that are way overvalued. Stimulus is all that has that's been all of Wall Street for the last 10 years, arguably longer. But, the economic picture that I'm painting is very different from the political picture. The political picture is people don't have money, they want money, the government has the ability to give them money, and so if the government gives them money, then that means the government cares about you. And if Trump is able to go into this election, pushing a narrative of, I care about you because I sent out checks, and Nancy Pelosi doesn't care about you because she refused to send out checks, well, then that's a very clear political win. It's so clear and so easy that I just see zero possibility that it doesn't happen. The danger to Wall Street in the short term, less so, is the inability of a stimulus bill to be passed, and more so, the risk of post-election violence and unrest over unclear results. I will be very surprised if we know who wins Pennsylvania on election night. And as far as I'm concerned, Pennsylvania is the most important state. I think that Arizona is also iffy. But pretty much the most pivotal state is going to be Pennsylvania. And we will not know who won, unless there's a Biden landslide. We will not know who won, which I think is very unlikely. We will not know who will be the next president until Pennsylvania finishes casting their votes. That is where we have the highest probability for a Bush v. Gore kind of situation. And so if I were, one of the odds makers on Wall Street, if I were one of the speculators, that would be what I was betting on right now, not on the stupid stimulus bill. So, with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So, I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.